Good evening and welcome to the Wednesday, May 20th, 2026 Penfield Town Board Work Session. I will now call the meeting to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Would you please call the roll?
Barry.
Here.
Dean. Here. Getz.
Here.
Lang.
Here.
Teglash.
Here.
All right, I hope folks had an opportunity to review the minutes from the April 15th meeting. Do I have a motion to approve?
I so moved.
Second?
I'll second.
Vote. Barry.
Aye.
Dean.
Aye.
Getz.
Abstain. I was not present.
Lang.
Aye.
Teglash.
Aye.
All right, next we are going to have a guest, and I will turn it over to Carrie and Mark to introduce him.
So with this evening is Tom Robinson with Colliers Engineering. They've been working closely with the Transportation Committee as well as many other committees as they've been working on this active transportation plan for us. So Tom's here tonight to give a brief update on that. He was before Transportation Committee last night, giving a little bit more in-depth coverage on that, and then we put it out for the public comment after this as well. So we're going to then put it online and allow the public. They've had opportunities to put input so far, but then provide some input on the document as it's been drafted. So then I'll turn it over to Tom.
Great. Thanks, Mark. Yeah, I'll try to give you a brief summary of where we are with the active transportation plan right now as we move into kind of its final stages. There's quite a lot of material there, but I'll hit the high points tonight, and then I'm sure it'll be up on the town website before long, and you can look at the whole thing. The overall purpose of the active transportation plan is to improve connectivity, safety, and mobility for pedestrians and bicyclists in the town of Penfield. The recommendations we'll look at tonight were informed by our community engagement and interagency cooperation and communication. So public engagement was woven into the entire process. We've been working on this plan for a little bit over a year now. We had a series of project advisory committee meetings. The committee for this project was the Transportation Committee, so I've talked to them several times. We've had a series of stakeholder focus groups that included communication with New York State DOT and Monroe County DOT, as well as some other groups. Those focus groups helped us kind of connect to some of the other initiatives that are happening in Penfield right now. Specifically, the Climate Action Plan has a lot of overlap with active transportation, so we capitalized on that. We had 2025, we were at the Independence Day with a pop-up meeting. We had 2 community-wide public workshops, and then we completed an online engagement and survey. So the online survey was up and active for about 4 months. It consisted of 31 questions, and we had almost 700 responses, so that's quite good for a project like this. And in addition to answering the question, there were a lot of write-in responses that we went through and summarized and made that part of the plan as well. So some of the key takeaways from the survey included what people considered top destinations for walking and bicycling in Penfield. That included the parks and open space, the schools, and commercial areas. We asked what the most desired improvements were. Off-road multi-use trails came in as number 1, followed by better sidewalks and protected bicycle facilities. We asked the question, if you could only make one investment for active transportation in Penfield, what would it be? And the overwhelming favorite was off-street trails. So that was interesting and helped inform our recommendations. Walking frequently for exercise, recreation, and errands. So there is a desire and a demand for improving the safety and connectivity of the pedestrian network. We studied the existing conditions, off-road and on-road, quite thoroughly. We looked at the existing land use and zoning in Penfield as it affects active transportation. We studied roadway characteristics, including crash history analysis and ratings of bicycle rideability that were provided to us by the Genesee Transportation Council. We looked at priority intersections, a short set, 6 locations that were identified by the town. We tried to look at intersections in different parts of the town, intersections with different roadway jurisdictions, as well as different intersection geometry. So they kind of provide typologies or prototypes that we can apply to other places in the town as well. We use digital time-lapse cameras to identify movement and behavior and compliance at the intersections and see where improvements could be made. One last thing that's not on this list, a shout out to the Genesee Transportation Council. They deployed their infrared trail counters at 6 different trail locations, so we got some trail counts as well. So really trying to merge the off-road and on-road networks. So our recommendations we put into 3 big buckets. The first bucket is the on-road improvements that includes the roadways and the adjacent sidewalks. The second bucket is the off-road improvements, so different types of shared use and multi-use pathways and trails. And then the third bucket are a lot of the non-physical things, the programs and policies. So everything from maintenance requirements and maintenance programs to educational initiatives to land use guidance and design regulations. All of those things are necessary to support the infrastructure improvements to make a really bicycle and pedestrian-friendly community. We created an on-road improvement toolkit with different types of improvements that we felt would be applicable and feasible in Penfield. So this became a short set of things. We really focused on improvements we have seen applied in Monroe County over recent years, so we're kind of using locally applicable and relevant improvement types. The second thing we try to do is choose improvements that really build on and take advantage of the existing infrastructure and the facilities and resources that are in the town. So examples of those include improved edge protection for the existing shoulders, things like closing the sidewalk gaps and really building on Penfield's pretty robust sidewalk program, and bicycle boulevards. So we'll explain what each of these mean, but really looking to build on what we already have is a key towards success. So closing the sidewalk gaps, we talked with Mark and the town staff about what their plans are, what they've done in recent years, how that system is developing, and then we wove in the input that we got from the public and from the residents, and where there seemed to be people really interested in particular gaps. So we mapped those in GIS for the town and came up with kind of a short list of high priority gaps to fill in the near future. Focusing on bicyclist conditions, we looked at things that we think we could do. There was a spectrum of kind of from low-hanging fruit to more ambitious projects, but that's a good thing. They kind of sort themselves into near-term, mid-term, and long-term endeavors. The image on that screen is just a Google Street View shot of Brighton Henrietta Town Line Road, which is a Monroe County DOT roadway, where they recently created a new buffered bicycle lane. So that's a new thing for Monroe County, designated bicycle lanes, and adding the buffer is just a little bit of added security and safety for people bicycling in the shoulder, but in this roadway's case, also walking in the shoulder, because there is no sidewalk. So these are things that we think, since Monroe County DOT is already doing them in other nearby towns, they could be applied in Penfield as well. And here is a image rendering of a specific location in Penfield where some of these things could happen. So this is a stretch of Atlantic Avenue, west of Scribner, lower left-hand corner. You can see the existing conditions. And we just look at how some of these improvement types can be combined to create an overall environment that encourages bicycle and pedestrian movement. This stretch of roadway has a sidewalk on one side of the road. There are very few curb cuts or conflicts of that sort, so it's a candidate for what we call sidewalk widening, where you just take the existing 5-foot wide concrete sidewalk, double pour it, and you end up with a 10-foot wide ADA compliant, AASHTO compliant, multi-use pathway. Your A-level cyclists are still probably going to ride in the roadway. This has a generous shoulder on the road, so we added some protection with a rumble strip and then the painted buffer as well. Some of the other things we do to add to the supportive environment are to consider street trees for shade and microclimate and resting spots, which just help folks with challenged mobility along the pathway. So this is just an idea of what can be achieved through combining some of these various improvements in specific locations. This was an example of one of the priority intersections we looked at. This is Liberty Street on 5 Mile Line Road near the Four Corners. It gets a lot of school-generated traffic. We were concerned about this. We deployed our cameras. We saw a lot of what was going on. And made some suggested improvements based on what we saw in the analysis. So it shows a raised crosswalk, which is basically a speed table. It's not like the speed bumps that bottom out your car, but it is a good traffic calming measure. It also elevates pedestrians just enough that they get a little bit of an advantage as they cross the road. These are constructed in various locations in Monroe County, so we know they can work. We enhanced the pavement markings and just added some other incremental improvements altogether to kind of raise the safety level for pedestrians at this intersection. This is a much bigger map. This is an overall vision of the town and how we think the off-road systems and on-road systems can work together to achieve our objectives. So this is sort of how we did communicate with the DOTs, and there are ongoing projects that we want to connect to. Empire Boulevard is going to have a study to look at some possible pedestrian and bicycle improvements. Atlantic Avenue is getting some improvements in the near future that have already been designed. So we were trying to tie in our ideas to these things that are already happening or are going to happen to get the most bang for our buck and really pull this system together. So that's just a big overview. We identified the key community destinations that people talked about in the online survey and tried to figure out how our trails and on-road improvements can tie everything together. Then we zoom into one particular project concept that got a lot of interest. And in our plan, we call it the Penfield Community Connector Trail. And the Trail Committee has already been looking at this for some time now. And we just did some additional analysis and looked at all the things that could be tied together from this facility, the Town Hall Memorial Park area, all the way down to Shadow Pines. So you're pulling together town facilities, conservation areas, town parks, and schools, all with one multi-use trail that would be safe for pedestrians and bicyclists and potentially ADA compliant throughout its entire length. So it's a very, very interesting and quite feasible possibility at this point, and we're recommending some next steps to move this forward. As part of this transportation plan, we did talk to some of the major landowners, including Genesee Land Trust for the Irene Gosson Nature Preserve, and contact with the Nature Conservancy for the Peace Through the Thousand Acre Swamp, as well as the school district. So far, of course, no commitments, no obligations, but a lot of enthusiasm for the idea. Policy and program recommendations included a wide spectrum of things. We did look at sort of case studies and policies for e-bikes and scooters and micromobility. We looked at maintenance and operations, and of course, the land use regulations to try to look at how those things can be woven into all of this. You know, everybody talks about the 3 E's, which are the engineering, the enforcement, and the education all together, and you do need to have all those things come up together to make it a bike and pet-friendly community. And there's the 3 E's, and the image on the right-hand side is a illustration of sort of the new generation of automated traffic enforcement. We're seeing more of this around the country, but specifically in some of our peer communities. Syracuse has done quite a good job with automated traffic enforcement in their school zones. And what caught our eye with that is the data they're getting about the outcomes and impacts. And the infractions have gone way down in school zones since they started this program. City of Rochester is now having a series of public meetings to investigate possibly reintroducing red light cameras. So there's a lot of sort of new and oncoming technology out there, and we just need to be aware of it. And again, conversations with the DOTs, see how that might enhance our goals for safety in Penfield. As far as implementation, we identified some follow-on activities, some funding sources for some of the recommended projects, and we provide a cost estimating toolbox so we can get a general idea moving forward of what budgets might be for some of these recommended improvements. That's it in a nutshell. There's over 100 pages in the report, so there's a lot more detailed information, but I'm happy to answer any questions I can at this point.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, absolutely.
So obviously some of the main roads are either state roads or county roads. So how receptive are the state and county DOT to making these type of improvements?
So the town has a very good relationship with both DOTs, which is a big advantage. And we contacted them very early. One of the things we asked them is if they had anything in their queues in terms of lane reductions or actually physically changing roads in Penfield. And the answer was no, not at this time. So that kind of guided where we went with this project. We're aware of the main roads, and we look at things that we can do, but we really focused on things that are more in the town's control in this case. That's not to say we should ignore the main roads. We don't want to do that, and we're constantly gathering data and figuring out what improvements might be in the future. But we tied to the projects they are doing now. So there are some improvements coming online for Atlantic Ave. We definitely think we should all stay in touch with state DOT as the Empire Boulevard study evolves. So these are things, you know, we kind of set the stage now. We look at what we can do in the nearer term. But this plan doesn't go real heavy on big changes to the major county and state roads at this point.
Thank you.
And this may already answer my question, for the traffic calming measures, were the lights looked at, the delays of the signals, or is that because that is so influenced by DOT, that's not something you looked at? For example, there are some towns that have implemented where there's no traffic. Everybody's red to allow pedestrians to cross, or a longer red, dual red for everybody. Were those things you looked at?
No.
Okay.
No, not in any detail, but those are definitely things that can be addressed, and it's fair to take that to DOT if you get feedback that there's something not working with the current signal timings. The all-walk phase that you mentioned is, that's a possibility. They have their own criteria for implementing that. But, what we would encourage is just keep up the level of communication you have with the agencies and it's a constant process. Bring these things to their attention if they get mentioned to you. But we didn't go into the signalization detail for this plan.
Yeah, currently the town of Penfield, we don't own any traffic lights.
Right.
So all of them are state or county because we intersect with one of their roads, but we are, through the supervisor, through us, reaching out to them, asking for different, analysis or things that we can do to, tweak them. And as Tom said, they've kind of got their own criteria for that, but we do advocate heavily for Penfield and, what we can do to, take a look at that and improve their traffic flow, or pedestrian safety.
Yeah, and the pedestrian-only cycle is something that I always feel like I've seen in other places.
Right.
And it's interesting to see every car stopped and only people walking at intersections. So that is definitely something I've been thinking about as well.
Right.
Yep. They're open to signal timing changes as land use around the intersection changes too. If you have a senior living facility coming up a block from an intersection, they might look at changing the signal timing related to that kind of thing as well. So, yeah.
So what are, for us or for anybody watching, what's next?
So the draft document is going to be loaded onto the town's website under the project page, Project of Community Interest,
Right.
Active Transportation page. We're asking folks to review it. Anybody who's got comments is welcome to submit that to the town at planning@penfieldny.gov at any time in the next couple of weeks. We were going to have on the June legislative agenda under public participation, similar to what we did for sidewalks earlier this month, have item A be comments on active feedback for active transportation plan. And this way it's called out on the agenda. Anybody who's interested and wants to speak to that specifically can come and share feedback with the town board. And then what we would do is address those comments, finalize the plan, and then prepare it for presentation to the town board and have it be accepted as complete at a future legislative by way of a resolution. So it doesn't need to be, there's no public hearing required, but we do want to sort of specify a timeline for public comment on the draft.
Very good. From what you shared, it's good information. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Good stuff.
All right, thank you.
All right, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have Matt Thomlinson from Marathon Engineering and Jeff Cook from Cook Properties. They are here to present a preliminary idea to the town board regarding a residential development project that would require rezoning by the town board. I ask that they present the idea publicly to the town board at this time to ensure transparency from the beginning, actually before the beginning of any process regarding this idea. So I will turn it over to you, gentlemen.
Great, thank you very much. I'm Matt Townlinson, this is Jeff. And we're excited to be here tonight to discuss this with you folks and solicit your feedback on it. So the property that we're specifically requesting some feedback on is at 1210 Fairport 9 Mile Point Road, which is at the northeast corner of the intersection of Route 250 and Marchner Road. It's just over 57 acres, and what we're showing on the screen here is about 53 acres of it to be developed, 4 acres to remain in the seller's hands down in the lower left-hand corner of the plan that you're looking at here. And what we're currently working with as far as existing zoning is RA2 zoning, which is a 2-acre minimum rural agricultural zoning district, or agricultural zoning district, 2-acre minimum lot size with 200-foot minimum width. And so when you talk about a parcel that's 57 acres, you'd be talking about a density, large estate lots, somewhere in the 20 to 25 parcel range from housing, which when you build infrastructure, and especially for a site like this that has available sewer and water, while there is a demand for those type, this parcel really lends itself to a higher density, and we'll talk a little bit more about that as we move forward. So what we're proposing here with the available utilities, circulation, and road frontage is a rezone, and we are proposing, and what's on the plan here is approximately 240 units with a mix that I'll talk through a little bit with some numbers. So the townhouses that are represented with the green background, both fronting on Route 250 on the screen left and planned south towards Marchner, are 3 and 4 unit buildings, and there's a total of 177 units currently shown. As contemplated, those would be all for rent townhouses. Those would be mix of 2 and 3 bedrooms, and those would be a for rent product. And then with the white background, single family on smaller, more dense lots. Those lots are represented at 65 feet wide by 120 feet deep, so just under 8,000 square feet as the typical lot size. And those would be single family for sale residential, so we'd have a mixed neighborhood. And Jeff will give a little bit more information about the single family homes and the townhomes and what we're trying to create from a community standpoint as we do that. We did look at several different iterations or layout options for this parcel in order to come up with, what fit Jeff and his group's vision for the project. And part of what we're here to talk about a little bit is just the zoning that it could be moved into, and I've had some discussions with Carrie and Mark about this as well. Having a mixed product like this with for rent and for sale, townhome and single family, there isn't a real clean existing zoning district within the town other than potentially a PD or a planned development, other than an incentive zoning approach. So I think both of those potentially are available for the board to consider as we continue to work through this process if the board is so inclined to move it forward. But it doesn't neatly fit in a cluster subdivision, for example, or a multifamily residential just because of the intended mix of dwelling types. This plan, we would anticipate that there would be dedicated utilities throughout with a single-family home ownership for sale product. As contemplated currently, this would be with dedicated roads for roads A and B, with the potential for road C, which is, call it the horseshoe, on the west side of the parcel, potentially being private, going through the for rent portion of it. This project would also be consistent with several of the town's stated goals, and I've got a few examples of that, but the 2023 comprehensive plan update designated future locations designated for high-density residential include the northeast corner of Route 250 in Marchner, which is this parcel. The area is intended to extend the existing higher-density development pattern within the village of Webster into Penfield. Just north of us is a townhouse project, and that's right, we're right on the Webster and Penfield line. And one of the purposes of higher density residential is to meet the citizens' demand for a variety of housing types. Residential uses should consist of attached housing such as townhouses or apartments, and development densities within the high-density residential area typically greater than 4 units per acre for single-family detached housing. So we think that the plan that we, at a concept level, have come up with really checks a lot of those boxes. I'd also note that the supervisor had a note about housing and potentially pursuing a pro-housing community approach for the town of Penfield, which we think is great. We need more housing, and it's our understanding that the town is also pursuing a housing and fiscal analysis and the impacts of additional residential units within the town, and that highlighted several things: affordability, availability of for rent product to have a higher ratio of 3-bedroom units, which I think what we're proposing will satisfy a significant amount of that as well. The density shown here is just under 5 units per acre, so we're up near that units per acre density level kind of identified in the comprehensive plan. as being pursued here. So with that, I'll turn it over to Jeff, and we do have a couple of additional sheets within here, which maybe I can control, but maybe Carrie can.
Either one.
Do a forward arrow.
Maybe. All right, maybe Carrie can scroll down
yeah.
for us, but
Let me-
I'm going to
let me
turn
do-
it over to Jeff to kind of describe his vision for the community, as well as just kind of talk through some of the representative images that are being shown here for you.
Sure, thanks, Matt. Yeah, Jeffrey Cook, CEO of Cook Properties. We are a statewide real estate development and management company. And we're very, very excited about this project. I'm a former resident of Penfield for about 13 years, up until about 4 years ago. We're all about, our development company and management company is all about residential housing solutions. We're very excited about this project because we feel we can really meet the needs, some of the needs that Penfield is looking to fulfill. The type of housing that we want to site on this piece of land is going to meet the needs of seniors, first-time home buyers, police officers, firefighters, nurses, those in the middle income brackets, which, as we all know, those brackets of income, housing has become very scarce. So again, we feel we can meet those needs through our single-family home development, and then also with our rental townhomes. Our single-family homes are going to be single-story, so they'll be great for not only for first-time home buyers, but specifically for seniors. Square footage, they're all going to be custom homes, of course. Square footage is going to range anywhere from 1,200 square feet on up to 1,800, even a little bit larger if so desired by the homeowner. Our townhomes are going to predominantly be three-bedroom townhomes, which we know is a need that has been identified by the town of Penfield. Again, we're very excited here to be here. Very excited to potentially do this development, and we're always very interested and very eager to be where we're wanted and where we're supported, and so far the reception has been very welcome. So we certainly would like to continue that. But at the same time, we are. I like to describe ourselves as not as old school developers. We want to be flexible. We want to be where we're wanted, and we want to develop as partners with the town of Penfield. So with that, I know we don't have a lot of time. I'll just leave it. If there's any questions, we'll be happy to answer those.
So when you said these are all single-floor homes,
Yes, ma'am.
townhouses are different?
You're correct. Yeah, the
Right.
single-family homes. Yep.
Yeah, so, but did you say one story, all one story?
One story,
Okay.
correct.
Basement or no basement?
They can have a basement.
Okay.
They don't have to. It all depends on the homeowner.
Okay,
Yep.
okay,
We can do slabs or basement.
okay.
But again, we obviously, like any other single-family home developer, we would have 3, 4, 5 models that people could
Choose.
could help them to decide on their particular home, but they would all be custom homes.
You said you like to be where you're wanted. Have you had any contact with the neighbors to get any input from them on this idea?
We have not, but that is certainly one of our intentions.
And going back to the satellite map, the design of it all,
Yes.
I was looking at the GIS map, trying to figure out where exactly and just visualize it that way. But it looks like you've got some type of buffer where the townhomes are. Are those trees that are surrounding? See those dots in the green area?
Yeah, we're just showing some representative
Okay.
trees there, yep. But
Okay.
we are trying to create a little bit of a backyard with this. And in this, from a concept and a density plan, we would expect many renditions and feedback from the planning board as well as part of moving
Sure.
this forward, yeah.
Sure. And you're looking at one exit coming out onto 9 Mile?
Correct, and then one additional to Marchner.
All right. And have you done this elsewhere in New York State that we could look at?
As
Something
far as
similar.
constructed?
It's something similar to this project?
We have not, no.
Okay.
No, no.
Yeah, so if I could just give
Sure.
some examples. We've been working with Jeff on a project in Canandaigua that we have all approved, ready to go until RG&E hit us with a surprise $14 million bill to bring it in. But that was 100 acres, 660 units with some 3-story apartment buildings in addition, but that was a mix of single-family homes, townhomes, et cetera. So, and that was an incentive zoning approval process extremely similar to what we're proposing here. We haven't broken ground on it yet, but we have it all approved and ready to go as soon as we can break the RG&E piece loose.
We were 1 week away from breaking ground, and RG&E came and said, oh, we made a mistake. We don't have enough power for you, so
Oh, boy.
that was very frustrating.
But from a conservation subdivision, without the townhouses, Jeff's got a project in Geneva that's getting broken ground and getting ready to.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. So we have a project in Geneva, like Matt said. It's a 140-site subdivision on Carter Road, just north of the hospital, that will be breaking ground in June. So, and those homes will be a little bit lower on the price point than what we're proposing here. We expect those, they'll be in the high 2s to low 3s. We would expect the homes here in Penfield to be more in the, low to mid 3s to low 4s.
As of right now.
I'm sorry?
As of right now.
As of right now, yeah. 2 years from now, who knows
Right.
where they'll be. But yeah, if we were to break ground today, that's what we would expect them to be. So.
My understanding is you do have other projects nearby that are completed. They're just not like this one.
Yeah, so we have, we own a multitude of different types of real estate assets. We own storage units, we own commercial office and retail buildings. Our biggest asset is manufactured housing. We're the largest owner, operator, and developer of manufactured housing in New York State. We have over 7,200 lots. We serve about 15,000 residents on a daily basis. We actually just had an open house not too long ago out in Palmyra, where we had two homes that we developed and sited on spec. Very, very similar to the types of homes that we're proposing for our subdivision developments. That open house is in a land lease community, so it's a little different because we still own the land, whereas this project right here and the one in Geneva, the ultimate homeowner would own the land. But those homes in Palmyra we're going to be selling those for about $225, but they have to pay rent they're leasing the land, so they have to pay lot rent. If those homes were in a subdivision, they would be in the neighborhood of $300,000 to $350,000.
Is there
Anyone is welcome to. We had 2 spec homes, and those are for sale, but they have not been sold yet. I'm happy to host anyone if they want to come out and take a tour.
When you say that the townhomes will be renting only, is there a reason why the townhomes also couldn't be something for purchase, or is it just because of how the marketing value of it or the financial aspect of it?
A little bit of everything.
Okay.
When you have not infinite, but when you have a source of revenue that continues over multiple years, it adds more value to the project.
Understand.
So we're kind of trying to do like a mix of some rentals with the townhomes, and then of course the single-family homes, which would just be for sale. Again, we're proposing all rentals on the townhomes. That's certainly not set in stone. Like I said, we want to be a partner. So.
Would the rents be market rent?
They would be market rent, yep. No, there's no subsidies proposed whatsoever on this project.
I see adjacent to this property, at least 2 of the 4 sides, there's similar-ish townhome developments. The Village of Webster being on one side kind of convolutes the zoning question, but you mentioned incentive zoning, you mentioned maybe a different type of zoning. Is it you're looking for kind of a thought, or you have a thought in mind on which direction you're looking to go?
Incentive zoning's been what's been discussed with staff to date, and the PD versus the IZ, I'm not entirely sure because I haven't done one in Penfield in quite some time as far as how distinct or different that would be. I know across the street, you mentioned on the west side of 250, I believe that was an incentive zoning project as well, so that this would kind of match or be adjacent to that. So, the process from our standpoint on the developer side, working with this board as lead agent for seeker and the studies that we need to do and all the documentation and design is essentially the same. So we'd be looking for feedback from the town as far as which would be best to consider here.
I know that it's a very preliminary site plan, obviously, and a lot would change, but you mentioned dedication of roads, like Road A, B would be, but private Road C, so.
Potentially.
Okay.
Yeah, so that A and B, I believe that A and B, and Mark can correct me if I'm wrong, because it would be for sale, single-family residential, typically those would be dedicated roads through a subdivision like that. Road C would all be for rent, so in theory, that could be a private roadway.
And then, since there would be a for rent component, any thought to infrastructure to support that, like a clubhouse or a maintenance facility or any sort of recreational facilities?
Yeah, so great question, actually. Was just talking to Jeff about that earlier today. But so represented on this plan, that lower left-hand corner, what we have reserved as that open space is approximately 7 acres in size, and only 4 acres needs to remain. So there's about 3 acres of green space that we can incorporate that as we go into design for clubhouse, some amenity space, outdoor area. We just haven't gotten to that point yet, Bill.
When you said it was market rent, what are you foreseeing as a potential rate for, say, one of the apartments?
Yeah, so, again, given, where we are right now in the process, I mean, if we were to break ground tomorrow, well, I can just give you an example. So our candidate rents are going to be in the low $2 to $2.50 a square foot for our apartments out in Canandaigua that we're working on right now. I don't know where it's going to be in 18 months or 2 years. But it would be similar. It would be meeting the market. It certainly wouldn't be luxury, but again, it wouldn't be subsidized either. So I would expect in a couple of years we're probably going to be in that 250-ish range per square foot. So.
And those townhouses probably range from 12 to 1,500 square feet, somewhere in that neighborhood.
Yeah.
So 2,400 to 3,000, somewhere in that neighborhood.
Similar to where most, not luxury townhomes would be. So.
All right. Any other questions or comments?
Just for the town engineer here, Marchner Road, would there be any thought to any upgrades necessary to support this infrastructure here?
We'd have to look at it. I know there is one culvert just east of the property that has been targeted for upgrades. Just as a drainage infrastructure, I think we already even own the culvert, so I think we have the materials and parts for it. Would have to look at the overall road and everything else, so I haven't gotten that far.
And there's no current lights at Marchner, right? That is just a...
There is not, no. I know there's been questions about speeds on 250, and the state's looked at that. But obviously, as this comes in, you'd have to look at a traffic study, and then obviously 250 is a state road, so they would be involved in it. Marchner is a town road. But as we look at the intersections and look at the state, look at the numbers, then they'd have to see what makes sense.
Could you please explain again about your development in Geneva? What is that? Is it this type of thing, or is it similar to what you're proposing here?
Very similar. The only difference is there's no for-rent townhomes.
Okay.
Yep. Other than
was
that, it's exactly the same.
Okay, thank you.
Like I said, the price point's is going to be a little bit lower, just because the income in Geneva is a little bit lower than Penfield.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
If I could, I guess, I just asked the question, and obviously there's no commitment here, but as far as moving forward from Jeff's standpoint, just any concerns from the town that we should be considering other than taking those next steps to kind of advance the proposal?
I don't have anything at this point. This is very preliminary right now.
Yeah.
So,
I would just say that if it is incentive zoning that you're looking to pursue, what that looks like, what the return is for the town, or if you want to go a different route with the zoning, just what that, because that plays into at least my decision-making process.
Yeah, and there were 2 incentive zoning projects across the street. So the one, I think Carrie had the aerial up, is Barclay Park, which is kind of where the F of Fairport is. And now, and then Carrie cited that's a River Birch Lane was an incentive zoning application before the town board a number of years ago. And then Abington development was similarly done. So in the past, they've established, as Matt had shared from the beginning, what the underlying zoning density would allow. So look at how many units it would allow, and then they looked at, what, and then established, what that incentive was, what the per unit rate was, above and beyond that is kind of how that's, been approached in the past under that incentive zoning path.
Looking here, it looks like there's some sort of stream or brook that goes through there. And how would that be affected with this?
Yeah, so if that is somewhat represented in the plan, if you want to flip back to the PDF there, Carrie. It essentially runs through in between where the single family and the townhouses are, so there would need to be a wetland delineation, normal studies that we would do as we go through the planning board for the seeker consideration by the board, so.
Any other EPOD in there?
There's a small piece of floodplain, 100-year floodplain on the right-hand side of the screen on the east side. It's very shallow. That stream that it's associated with is actually on the property to the east, but that would be another thing that we would need to study and consider. But it's primarily where Stormwater Management Facility B is shown there and pretty limited as far as impact to the property.
Yes, staff hasn't performed any detailed
Right,
analysis. It's such a preliminary concept or idea.
Gotcha.
But certainly, we did share the public GIS viewers so they could turn on all the features and see what was on the property.
I appreciate you coming here for this, because so often we hear from residents that it's so far along and they don't know, but now any resident could pull this up, watch this presentation. So I appreciate this process.
I like to consider myself a new style developer where we want to be partners with the municipalities that we're developing in, so.
Appreciate that.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, next we will move on to public participation. Is there anyone here for public participation? Okay, then we will move on to the action items. So, Ms. Ivers, you wanted to talk about fee schedule?
I did. Thank you so much. So I just wanted to start the conversation with the town board. As you all know, as we've been giving updates on a monthly basis on various projects, the Alpheus Clerk House and Lodge is nearing completion. I'm reluctant to give a date of when that is because we're getting lots of inquiries about when it might be available to rent and reserve. But before we do that, we need to have a conversation around what the lodge fee should be. And so one of the key pieces that we're waiting for is there is currently an active bid out for janitorial services for this facility. Because of its, what we anticipate going to be its very regular use, sort of the level or, the type of facility that is, it needs to be outsourced to a provider that can do the cleaning as needed and as scheduled. So I wanted to start to gather some information. I did share, did some analysis of what other lodges are charging, and so I thought that be a good place to start the conversation with this board. Town staff from multiple departments have been meeting or have met to review and think about what the fee should be for this particular lodge, and so I think that we're awaiting the bid information to know what the cleaning charges would be, so that we're making a recommendation that's based on sort of just information on how much it's going to be to operate and maintain. So I thought I would share and forgive me, I'm realizing I thought I would share the current rates from the county properties or county lodges that are comparable in terms of size and amenities. And so I thought I would share that with you so you can sort of see the range of pricing as staff, and the staff that have been meeting include DPW facilities, DPW parks, recreation, and then representatives from building and zoning, engineering, and myself as we sort of hand the project from under construction to utilization and facilities and maintaining. So you'll see that Monroe County has a range, and I apologize, I'm going to also see if I can, I thought I saved, because pictures sometimes are worth 1,000 words. I'll share with you, these are the pricing for weekday and weekend rental. Some vary, some are the same. Monroe County only has some distinction. One of the things that, as a staff group, we're recommending there be just one fixed rental rate, whatever that's set at, because the value and usage could be very consistent from weekday to weekend. The user might be different, but the amenities are not changing, and the sort of the upscale conditions. So I thought for everybody, maybe who's watching at home, these are interior photos that were provided on the county's website. So I did not go into all these locations and snag photos. These are readily available on the internet. So here, as you'll see, this is the Durand Eastman Clubhouse that's located in the golf course. This is by far the largest available facility for rental, and we'll go back to that price so you can sort of correspond the different facilities. Here's the Grand View space. I believe this is in Powder Mills Park. These are the interior images. Here's the Jameson Ritter. That's the one that's the newer build, wood smaller on the smaller side. Apologies, but it's important for you to see some of the details here of what you're getting for your rental fee. This is the White House Lodge, also located up in the town of Webster, but also Monroe County Park property. And now here's the Alpheus Clark House finished interior. I would say this is, we're trying to keep this a secret, which is why the window shades have been closed, because people have been coming right up to the building now that the construction fencing is down and trying to sneak a peek into the inside. You'll see here are some of the interior spaces and the amenities that are provided to the folks who are going to be using the facility. Here are the bathrooms that we offer in this space. So it's a little bit, just so folks are understanding sort of what's being provided. And this is the outdoor patio that's available and connected to the interior lodge. So I thought that would be important to have that conversation. We're not ready to present a suggested or and ultimately it's the town board's decision as to what you set the rental fee. We just thought it would be important to have a sort of a basis of what are other lodges that are this sort of this caliber charging. I thought the other thing that I would share with you is that if you wanted to just rent, this facility is going to have 14 round tables, 140 chairs, and a few longer tables for food or things that you might need to put out. If you wanted to rent 14 tables and the chairs, I just pulled together some costs for that. And then if you add in a tent for enclosure of some sort, the pricing of what that would be. So if I wanted to have a party in my backyard and rent the tent and the tables and the chairs to accommodate the number of people that we can accommodate at the Alpheus Clark House and Lodge, this is what you'd be spending. So just to think it's important to sort of as we're thinking about it, and so if town staff, based on the operations and maintenance charges and the sort of the fixed costs that the town is going to have to maintain over time, we wanted just to have a basis for that so that there's some understanding of we're not pulling a number out of thin air,
Right.
if that makes sense. So we don't have a number yet. We're waiting for the results of the bid to know what those cleaning charges are. from some preliminary conversations we've had with current contractors who perform janitorial services for the town now, they were saying not to be surprised by a $500 to $700 per clean charge. We know what our spectrum charges are, so I think, a building of this nature, it's not going to be cheap to maintain.
And that charge, whatever that comes in at, what are we looking at? It's certainly not after every time somebody, so we might be looking at it every time somebody.
Yeah, we're looking at doing the way the bid has been released, it's, there's a per diem cleaning rate.
Right.
We're asking what their per diem would be, and the hours of those cleanings would vary. And we'll, obviously, and then there's also a provision for a short notice cleaning that's required. Now, obviously, in a case where something has to be done, the town does have facility staff that,
Right.
but that's just not sustainable for ongoing rental, especially given the fact that we've got two other fully functioning lodges, open pavilions that need to be cleaned and maintained after they're rented. So this is why I wanted to bring this conversation to the town board now as a starting point.
Do we see, because it is so much larger, what the heating, cooling charges would be compared to?
I'm in the process, so hard to know that, but
Right.
what I've done is did ask RG&E to provide billing from the Dolomite Lodge for 2025, so I'll have that analysis to share, and I will sort of have to extrapolate or adjust it for a larger space. Now, this is a newer building, so obviously using very current, technology and equipment, but it still needs to be heated and cooled. So I think I'm going to have some, basis for what those utility costs might look like. Please don't hold me to them. I'm going to just say that for the record.
Right.
We do know what our fixed spectrum cost is going to be to have internet service, which was needed for, both, monitoring of our various, systems, and we actually are going to have access control at this facility. So it's one of those things where it's, I just wanted to make sure that we were sharing this information, up front, providing some basis so that we're not just picking a random or arbitrary number out of the sky. And so just wanted to share that. So just wanted to start the conversation at next week's work session. I'm hoping we'll have more of this information filled in so we can present a recommendation. I think the other important thing to note is among staff that were talking about it and trying to bring a recommendation to the town board for consideration, we did say that the resident fee, whatever that is, the non-resident fee should be significantly higher. And using some, either by percentage, is it 50% higher? Is it 60%? Is there, some, number? So again, that we're not being arbitrary, we're just saying it should be 50% more than whatever the town resident. There should be a benefit to being the resident and not a penalty, but you should be paying more of a premium if you're not a taxpayer.
Great. One of in your notes that you provide us, there was one bullet here: the town should not allow or significantly limit internal usage of the lodge. Would you explain that a little bit more? What are you thinking?
So the thought is to see sort of what the demand is for the lodge space, to see what the community needs. We know that the minute that our lodges are available for reservation in December to residents, that any dates that are most available, I don't know that anybody outside the town gets a lodge rental in the town of Penfield, because I think all available dates are booked.
Oh, I remember those days.
Yes. Well, and I remember foolishly thinking I had to wait till January and didn't realize that there was a resident early bird special, and I lost out, so.
You were renting this into the chairs.
Yes.
So you know those costs.
I do know those costs. So I think that, and those other lodges are reserved currently, like set aside. So I think it'd be important to see after a full because we're likely going to look at bringing or making the lodge available for reservation sometime this summer. It won't be a full year to really test
Right,
what
okay.
the availability and demand is. So by waiting just even another full year until the end of 2027 to decide, okay, now we know this is what our usage is, we can set aside, and, you know, and we're not taking away from the community's needs. You know, that's the idea, is that this is something that community members might really, it might be meeting a need that has not yet been met, like in terms of not just personal parties, but are there organizations that would like to, corporate events?
Oh,
Could you
yeah.
you could have conferences, could you have meetings, annual things? So I just, before it gets, you know, sort of taken up by the town, it feels like you should see what the true public demand is.
Good.
That was the thought.
Good point.
Carrie, could you just remind us again the maximum occupancy?
Maximum occupancy posted in the building is 205.
Okay.
And so we are bigger than, so Ontario Beach is the
We
closest.
beat Ontario Beach.
I'm sorry. Yes. And that's not including the outdoor space, that's just the inside. So,
And then when you rent it, what are you renting? Are you renting just the space or the tables, the chairs?
you have the table, everything, the facility will have, you'll have access from the entire addition, that's the lodge space. So there's the coat room, there's the entryway, the prep kitchen. There's actually another little, small, I didn't take a photo of it, but there's another small, like, sort of prep room that you have access to, the entire lodge space as well. And then outdoor patio, and then there'll be the 14 round tables.
okay.
And there are 140 stackable hard chairs, they're not folding chairs. And so anybody who's renting it would have access to all of that.
Okay. All right, that's good to consider.
Yeah.
Is there going to be furniture for the outdoor?
We're looking at, so facilities, Tim Masterton and Jay, and Parks and Facilities are working together to identify. I think they're being mindful of not putting too much furniture out there so that there's area to stand around, but some seating and things that can't get legs and walk away.
Yeah,
So they're looking into that now.
okay, thank you.
All right, any other
So
questions or
more
comments
information to
on that?
come.
Yeah, very good.
Okay.
Exciting.
So next, we have more information on the LaSalle's Landing Comfort Station.
Yeah, so after and Mark can certainly chime in on this one, I'll start it, he can certainly chime in. After the project was, the contracts were awarded and the initial review of the upcoming comfort facility, staff from a few different departments were looking at the project and asking about some potential changes to make some changes that were outside the scope of what was originally designed and approved in the contracts. And so wanted to bring that, and the most significant changes were related to future data, utility, electrical needs, underground conduit, so that the idea being, okay, we're not sure, you know, when the building was, it's a bathroom, so when the building was approved and reviewed by town staff last year before it went out to bid, we weren't envisioning access controls, we weren't envisioning security, and so now with some additional eyes on the project, we're questioning whether those things were needed and could they be provided. So we asked MRB to, you know, what would that entail? And so I'll share that with you now. And so the scope included adding door access control, so remote access control, the ability to have additional conduit from both the connecting from the building out to the right-of-way. Originally, in the original design, it was one spare conduit. Now they've asked for 2 spare conduits connected out to the right-of-way. And then in addition, some conduit from the building heading east and west for future expansion if needed. So that could provide conduit for either data and security lines or future expansion of electricity out to various other locations on the site. Thinking that this is the time we have, the ground is open, now is the time to make those changes. So what you're looking at on the screen, the other change that was made was originally sidewalk was discussed about being made available on the south side of the building so that the utility room would have a sidewalk connection. And before it went out to bid, that was removed, and now staff was like, that shouldn't have been removed. We need that connection for, accessing and for staff mobility purposes. The door hardware changes were related to the remote access. And then the additional conduit work and electrical work, those costs are enumerated in the table. So if these are things, because they're outside the scope of the project and also outside of the scope of the contracts that were awarded, it didn't feel like monies that we should be taking from the contingencies that each of these contracts have, because those are really intended to address things that you couldn't imagine prior to the, things that can't be known. And so wanted to talk with you about whether or not we want to move forward with these changes. And just so you know, there is going to be no additional cost for that EC05. That's purely something with day automation, and the electrical contractor has no change needed there. So it's, things that adding a data rack, the data.
Why do we need a data rack for the bathroom?
Cameras.
If we're going to have, so we're going to have security.
For the future, and then
Future security
And
systems.
being able to access it remotely?
door
Okay.
automation is they can shut and close, lock the bathrooms at night. Security would still go around, but then they can automatically open them in the morning. So
right.
you don't have to have a facilities person down there at 8 a.m. in the morning on a Saturday, Sunday. The doors can automatically open. The doors will automatically lock at the end of the day. Somebody would still go and check and make sure nobody stayed inside or the door wasn't propped open, but it automating some of those, and those are things that are being looked at our other facilities. So just kind of the timing, it came later in the process of what this is, but those elements are being looked at for our other parks or other locations, and doing updates to those as well. But just it kind of came a little later than it went out to bid. In the overall scope of the project, $60-some thousand is not a lot. In the overall,
We're over, as a reminder, it pains me to say this, but we are over $1 million for a bathroom. So
But it's much more than a bathroom.
it is much more.
it is. It's a comfort
outside
station. We've got a
shelter.
pavilion. We've got seating.
Yeah.
So it's
So
a.
this is,
And it was primarily grant funded, correct?
A large portion of it was grant funding. We have a $675,000 grant. Part of the cost for this building is just the foundational work that was
That was
required.
200,000+ was for the
Right, I
helical
remember
piles.
that.
We came back for the board on that. So that's why we're creeping up to $1 million or at $1 million bathroom. But, the helical piles will ensure the building won't sink, and, we'll make sure that it's there for
A long time.
years to come.
And it is, it's one of the only unencumbered sort of public access points to Arundequoit Bay, which I think is why it was funded from New York State. It's a small park, but it's very, very actively utilized. And so this, I think, will be a welcome asset. So I'm not sure how the board is feeling about the additional charges. What the ask here is to amend the affected contracts. It's two contracts. It's the GC's contract, the general contractor, and the electrical contractor's contract to reflect the change or the increase in the allotted scope and the associated costs. If the board is amenable to making these modifications and modifying the relative scopes and contracts, I would ask if we could do that by resolution as a special ledge action item at next week's meeting so that we don't hold up our own project timeline. Because right now we're at a critical stage of underground work is about to begin, foundation work is about to happen. All of this would have to happen before foundations go in.
How much was in the contingency portion of the budgets?
I apologize. I will, hold on one moment. I will track that down.
I think it was 10%.
It might have, I'm not sure if it was uniformly 10%. If you bear with me for a moment, I should be able to grab that for you. Oh, hang on one moment. I'm trying to figure out the fastest way to gather that. Hang on one second.
What's the difference between, if, I know you're looking that up, maybe Mark can answer this question about, there's a line ECO2 and ECO4.
Yep.
Where are you?
It's this
Oh.
one, right?
ECO, they read
There-
the
one's-
same to me.
Yeah, one was one side of the building and one was the other side of the building. So they're running the internal conduits for future cameras on one corner of the building, and the other runs under, if I'm thinking it right, runs under the canopy area where the future picnic tables are. So I think that's why that went slightly longer, that runs out, not inside the building, but in under the overhang part or the pavilion part of the back of the bathroom.
Yeah, one runs out west to the west side. The ECO1 is the additional 1-inch future conduit that runs out to the right of way. That just literally, they were going to dig out the ground and put one extra conduit next to the one that was already designed and going to be installed. ECO2 and ECO4 are additional conduits that were not contemplated running out to the east and the west side to get out to the parking lot to the west, so that right now currently there's no site lighting at this parcel. And so if it was ever deemed needed or wanted to put in site lighting to modify.
No internet down there.
There's no internet. So there's a few things that and then for the conduit to the east side of the building, it's if there were any additional, again, site lighting, things beyond the building that were needed. It's always easier to work with conduit that's already underground than it is to then have to go through and dig and then connect into and go through the foundation of an existing building, especially here and with the care and concentration that's going into the design of the foundation.
But there's no internet contemplated to be down there?
There
will be bringing it in for the cameras, and
Yeah.
so that's part of the ad afterwards, was to add in the conduits to be able to bring in the internet in, and then have cameras and security in the future.
Out of curiosity, so I get the idea of the remote access, but is there a reason why it's just not a timer type of opening the doors and locking the doors?
I think they can monitor and see if they truly did close and the latch closed
Okay.
or not. So if somebody had propped the door open, you can get an error
Gotcha.
from that. You can see that they, did actuate in the morning. So I think
Smart.
gives you a little more feedback on that, and you can have some remote that, obviously this is a very remote location from this building and other facilities, so it's a little bit of a drive down there.
Bear with, I'm so sorry. I'm trying to see if I can readily put my hands on the.
Oh, the contingency pieces.
Yeah, I feel like I had. I might have it in here. Hang on one moment. I'm so sorry. I'm not able to put I'm struggling to try to find it at this for the moment. Happy to share that or forward that to you, to all the entire board.
So is this being treated like a change order?
Yes.
What's the threshold where we'd have to go to bid for?
Because it's a current contract, it's $35,000 for a new project. In this instance, doesn't need to be rebid. It's an extension or expansion of an existing contract. My understanding is I'm going to defer to our town attorney to that, for that piece of it.
Okay, and where did these recommendations come from? I know you said so, but I'm just like,
No, so from
did
staff
you-
reviewing,
Okay.
so staff were reviewing, as we were getting ready for the project to initiate, and we were reviewing the building plans and trying to determine, just reviewing it with the staff who would be impacted, these questions arose. And so we decided to, this is the time to ask if we're going to make a change before the building is constructed is the time to do so, not after the fact. Always easier to make a change before the shovels go too much further into the ground. Right now, only
Concrete's
piles exist.
Where the concrete's poured.
Yeah.
yeah. I get that.
Initially, I don't think you would have to go out to bid, but I want to consider that more. That's my initial reaction, but I'll take a look at that.
I'd say we can provide the board with the contingencies amounts. I think the GC is very close, in my estimation, could be under that. But then any little thing that would come along, then we're coming back. So we just want to be upfront with the board saying these were specific changes that were asked for outside of the scope. So these weren't missed items. These weren't items that, came up during construction. That's what contingency is typically for, is unexpected soil conditions, unexpected, we missed something in the bid. These were extra asks, after the thing went out to bid. So truly are changes to scope. So, a little bit different than what the contingency is meant to handle. Kind of the stuff comes along and, a material change or something that's nominal that, isn't, too big of a change, but these were, specifically requested changes to the scope. We can provide it to the board, and then
Yeah.
obviously we have a work session next week, so if we can get it in your drop materials and then
Yeah.
Okay.
table
But what do you
the
need?
conversation.
So we're waiting for that information. What do you need to be prepared for next week if we do want to bring this to a resolution? Is there anything you need from us tonight?
Well, if, and Peter, I'm looking at you,
Why don't you just prepare resolutions to approve the change orders, and then the board will have them if they decide to take action.
then they're ready, and if you like not to, then there's
Okay.
no harm, no foul at that point, correct? Okay,
So just prepare them, have them, be ready, and if we need to act on it.
okay.
So do I need to make a motion to prepare the resolutions for the?
No.
I don't think so.
No?
They're just
Okay,
going
very
to
good.
bring it next time.
Okay.
So now,
There'll be new business items
Right.
at the
That's
special
fine.
edge. If you decide to take action on, then you can. If you don't, then.
we just table them, or we
Very good.
don't act on them, correct?
Yeah.
Because if
Or we
there's
don't
no,
even have the session.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's no reason why you can't adopt a resolution in a work session.
it is a consent agenda type of.
No, I mean,
Oh, just a.
yeah, you could add it that way, but, I don't know that you really need to formally schedule it as a legislative session. Is that what you're asking?
That was, yeah, I'm asking if that's needed or not needed.
That's been our practice, but I don't think it's required. That's been the practice. I think that may be what's contemplated in the town board rules, but, so why don't we do this? Let's
You could-
schedule
you could
a
advertise for it.
legislative session, and then we could cancel it if we don't need it.
Okay.
It's just the same night,
Sure.
immediately following the
You're
work
covered.
session.
Okay, excellent.
Is there anything else on that? All right, so next we will move on to informational items, and the first is a local law amendment
So,
potential.
yeah, so we've, at the town board, we've discussed some modifications to definitions or terms defined, and some additional definitions to add. And I just wanted to share that those definitions have been put into local law form. However, before they get presented formally or introduced formally, by Kevin or another town board member to the rest of the town board, that as we were going through those definitions, we're realizing that the code references don't align with the definitions that have been discussed, and in each of the districts, in the drop, I did provide sort of a summary of those sheets of from the various sections that have some provision that a conditional use permit is needed for a restaurant, some type of a restaurant or a dining establishment. There's lots of iterations of how it's referenced, and so I just wanted to bring that to the board's attention before the local law gets formally introduced, to make sure that there is no other changes or modifications that need to be addressed or discussed by among the town board members.
The only thing I still struggle with is the definition of these. For example, the restaurant drive-through, drive-up only. I don't know what that is. I mean, I don't know that that exists, if there's a restaurant that is truly just drive-up only.
We have one starting right now, 7 Brew.
7
Yeah.
Brew.
What is it?
7
So
Brew.
it's coffee, just the coffee.
They have
Yeah.
energy drinks,
Okay.
smoothies, they don't serve any food, so there's no sit-down area, there's no walk-up, it is a drive-up only.
Because when it comes to the coding and what we're trying to do, there are a lot of restaurant with drive-through that are really drive-throughs with the restaurant, if you know what I'm saying. They are primarily drive-through. Do they have a space where people can go in and sit down? Yes. But principally, they are the drive-throughs. And Chick-fil-A going up, McDonald's now, all their business is starting to be drive-through. And I don't know that we're addressing the future of what these businesses are with the intensity of their drive-through.
So one of the things I was going to, one of the things all of them require a conditional use permit, whether it has
Okay.
a drive-through or doesn't have a drive-through. Any restaurant, anywhere that a restaurant's allowed to be in the town of Penfield, you can't just have a restaurant by right. It's a conditional use permit. So I think that's where it becomes maybe a little bit trying to understand. So in either scenario, the conditional use permit process will look at that in terms of.
Okay.
And so you'll be evaluating the intensity of the land use. I think traffic impacts. You also note that in the definitions, there are other businesses that have a drive-through component. So rather than trying to address that, I added a definition for drive-through so that it's.
You've got drive-through banks, pharmacies.
And there could be future businesses that we haven't contemplated yet that might have that as a need or an addition. In the draft, so certainly could make these, add these terms defined. This way there's very clear distinction so that if there is a question from interpretation of what it is and what it isn't, we can point to the definitions. For drive-through, I just said physical design feature added to a retail establishment's building that allows customers to place orders, pay for, or pick up various goods or products through a designated window or lane while remaining in their cars. So that would apply to a bank, a pharmacy, a convenience store, because you've seen gas stations add a drive-through lane so you can go pick up your milk without having to get out of the car. I don't know that many of those have made it, to be honest with you. There's a few gas stations that tried it, and some still have it and some don't, but better to keep it sort of open-ended. And then we did add the combination so that we have restaurant sit-down with drive-through. In most cases, in all of the districts that allow restaurants, they refer to it, and the one thing I'll point out is we do not have a definition of bar and tavern or bar or tavern. So if we're going to, we might want to think about whether we add that in just for safekeeping. And our code is currently so silent on things like cidery or brewery. So we might as well.
Yeah.
We
Start
kind
defining.
of started snowballing as we had some of these going.
We felt like
If we're doing this update, what about, and do we need to, make sure these are all referenced and.
So we wanted to talk to you about it before a local law was introduced.
So.
The tavern and bar does seem like it's something that we should be addressing.
Yeah, so we don't want to make it seem like we're dragging our feet on this,
Right,
but
right.
we kind of started to stumble into other definitions we may not have, or they listed properly in the code zoning, so we just didn't want to create another issue while trying to solve one and create something else, and maybe just,
Something sounds a little like a domino effect.
Yes, a little bit, yes.
yeah, so Carrie and I kind of got into it and said, well, let's talk to the board and just make sure
Yeah.
we're solving a problem, not, trying to act quickly on something and, creating unintended consequences or
appreciate
create some
that.
other issues, so.
Also, because if these kinds of substantive changes were to be brought to light after the public hearing or while the public hearing is being conducted, we'd only have to set another public hearing. So trying to, limit, certainly always happy to have more public hearings than if needed, but if we could avoid and be more streamlined up front, we thought we would do that. So again, we can continue the conversation. We can expand some additional definitions and include those for discussion at next week's work session meeting, if you'd like.
That would be my suggestion.
Okay.
Yeah, just want to let the board know
Good with that.
we didn't drop it. We just kind of got down a rabbit hole of some other items that this may, as you said, domino into other items about it.
Yeah.
And then would you also make it, like these other areas that you highlighted here, would you make them consistent with the definitions?
I
then,
don't, I
too?
mean, that's going to become, that's a question, and then that's where it started to feel like it was going to maybe get
Daunting.
a little bit daunting.
Well, the problem is you're going to have these definitions, and then you're going to have these other things that you're not sure what they are, because they don't match the definitions.
The eating establishments. I think what we could do is, it could be a matter of adding the definition for eating establishment and say C. You can see that in zoning codes, although because of terminology appears, we can reference to see the other definitions.
Say that again?
So we could add a definition we could add term define, say, one of them was dining establishment,
Yeah.
right? And then so put dining establishment in the terms defined, and then say C definitions for, and then list the thing, like.
It's like a reference.
A reference to
Yeah,
the other
refers-
definition that applies.
Okay.
Again, more to come. We can take a stab at, or just adding a definition for it so that it's very clear cut.
Okay, are there more things on that this evening? All right,
Just give it a go.
Yeah,
And then
we'll come back next
Yeah.
week.
all right.
Pete has his office hours tomorrow. Now we know what we're doing.
Sidebar.
there you go.
All right, great. Now we'll go to town project updates.
Maybe I'll go first, give Carrie a chance to catch her breath. She's been doing most of the heavy lifting tonight. So as the board's seen, sidewalks are going on Jackson Road. Good news, we do have the easement from the Nature Conservancy that is in hand. Trees are supposed to be coming down this week, hopefully. The sidewalk contractor is idling by, to jump onto a plank road as well as Jackson Road. So we've got 1.5 miles of sidewalk in thus far from what we've got on Jackson, what we did on 5 Mile, and then we're hopefully rolling right over to Plank Road. He's had to do some county work, so we're just coordinated with him on that, but looking to keep going. Today was the last day we told the public to get in their comments, recommendations for sidewalks for next year. So we're currently compiling all the costs, putting it on a map, so I'll have that for discussion for the board next week. So at your work session, we'll kind of go through, here's all the requests, here's a map of all the locations, so we can look at that, and then we can kind of walk through where the board is looking at, and then how those all tie together. Talking a little bit about drainage. I shared with the supervisor today, we did get some updates. We've had 13 inches of rain since the beginning of March in the town of Penfield. So I know he's received drainage complaints, I've received drainage complaints. We're working with the public. A lot of concerns we can't cut our grass, a lot of concerns about stuff. We've had an exceptionally wet spring. So just bringing that to the board's attention. So as we hear concerns with that, we've got the Watershed Committee does an annual tour in June. That's coming up June 6th, I think, is our Saturday. So we'll be driving around and taking a look at some different areas in the town. The active transportation plan, Tom shared here with tonight, so I'll kind of just let that be unless there's more questions on that. EV car charging stations. We had a grant for that. There are new charging stations going in both at Rothfuss Park and the Four Corners. Those are just about complete. So those are going to be smart head ones, so slightly different than these. These we consider these dumb head ones. So these are...
We have to work on the branding of that, but go ahead.
Those are technical terms. So these are just plug and play. The smart head ones you can charge a cost and a fee to. So these ones we may look at upgrading in the back here. These were the original ones put in Monroe County. Were put back at the town hall. But some of the issues with the amount of time people are charging, the hours and everything else, the newer smart head ones you put in, you can establish that, right on there, to make sure the amount that's being charged, how many hours people are charging. So those should be online, I think, within a week or so.
So are those the kind that you can start charging after they've,
Those ones will be charging from the
from the
moment you
beginning?
plug
I've seen
in.
where they,
And then-
some that it's like, okay, you've charged 3 hours, now we're charging.
And we can, and the board
Okay.
can establish those. So all of ours, we can adjust the price. So we
Gotcha.
monitor, right now, basically, we're charging what it costs us. So the town of Penfield is not making a benefit on it, but, so as electric prices go up, we can adjust them. And then as you had shared, you can charge 4 hours, and then hour 5 is $1 more, and then hour 6 is, we can adjust that too, as if we want to say they're not intended for all-day charging. If you want to do that, great, but it comes at, an increased cost, and that's something we can talk about with the board going forward if we want to adjust those. That's why I say those are linked to the network, so you can, find those online. So those a little more advanced. The climate action plan, still moving forward. We're completing the greenhouse gas inventory. So that group's working with that. So we're still in the data collection phase, that working with our consultant, updating those. And then I think that's what I had on my list.
Yeah, and the only thing I'll say is that we are waiting on RKG. They're in the, finishing up their recommendations, and I'll be checking in with them to see when they'll be ready to visit us again as a guest at a work session meeting to discuss that.
For Penfield Board?
I'm so sorry, no, that's for the fiscal impact analysis.
Okay.
And then for Penfield Forward, it is nearing the completion of the community engagement, initial community engagement and reach out. They've had that first public workshop. They've done the online community survey related to future facility needs. There's been focus group discussions that have taken place. There's been one pop-up event at the EV car show and Arbor Day event. There's another pop-up event scheduled at PennFest, which is Friday, May 29th at Harris. So a week from this Friday at Harris Wellen Park from 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. It's a fun event, and so it'll be great. And then we expect them to be visiting us in June with sort of the outcome of that public engagement, so we can hear what the community says they need or want for the future of Town of Penfield facilities.
Great, thank you. There are no held items or old or new business. Was there anything else before we adjourn?
Just briefly, one, and I apologize, Gary. In my notes, I had something about just reviewing the conditional use permit and review fee versus the zoning board of appeals.
Oh, thank you. I apologize. I noticed I failed to mention that. So as we've mentioned before, and I believe Supervisor shared recently in a public note, that the town is migrating its permitting and board application processing to an online platform, GovWell. And while we've been building those workflows and the modules, we discovered that there's a discrepancy in the conditional use permit fee. Zoning board charges one fee, and planning board and town board charge a different fee, and we think at some point we should make it the same fee. It's the same type of application, it's just what body is reviewing it. And so if the board was amenable to that, we would make it all consistent with the zoning board's fee schedule. And so that doesn't, I mean, that can be navigated when we make the fee update for Alpheus Clark House, but thank you for saying that out loud. With the long-winded conversation, I failed to mention that.
All good.
Sorry.
Was there anything else before we adjourn? All right, the next work session will be May 27th, and I would ask for unanimous consent to adjourn. Seeing no objection, I will adjourn the meeting at 8:05 PM.